Hi guys, welcome back to Wentworth Life, the YouTube channel that talks everything Wentworth. If you're new to the channel, then hit that subscribe button right now for all future updates. And as usual, if you stick around until the end of the video, I will be responding to some of your comments from a previous video. Okay, wow, that was a pretty good episode, wasn't it? It had a lot of season 4 feels in this episode, especially with all the women chanting "freak, freak" when she came back into general. So things are proper hotting up now. So I'm going to start off with Ferguson. So, for the past week, Dr. Miller has been assessing Ferguson, and during a staff meeting, Anne Reynolds decides to let all the staff know that Ferguson can now return back to general, much to everyone's horror. Mr. Jackson, Vera, even Miss Miles, all of their faces just says it all. But I have to say though, I love Jake's cheeky little laugh. He was literally like a little naughty schoolboy laughing at the teacher in this scene. Anyway, Will tells Anne that Ferguson is not going back into general, and that is the end of it. So, Anne tells him that they will continue this discussion elsewhere. So, but Will being Will, he ends up quitting, yet again, because basically he can't get his own way. No, I don't mean that. I mean, I completely understand his complaint on this occasion. Anne has been undermining him for weeks now, and I think this Ferguson thing is just the last straw for him. But I have seen some comments over on social media recently with the yawning memes with Will threatening to quit his job yet again, because it is true. I don't know how many times now, but he's threatened to quit on so many occasions, and it is starting to get a little bit tiresome. But anyway, he quits. But Vera does tell Anne that if Will quits, she will end up losing half of the senior staff, including Vera herself. So this puts a little bit of a spanner in Anne's plans, because it's quite clear that she wants to get rid of Will, but Vera, being the good friend that she is, she keeps saving him. So anyway, Ferguson is going back into general. So, but before she does, there is a really amazing scene between Vera and Ferguson in the psych unit. Vera goes down and asks Ferguson, is it all worth it? Is it worth faking her memory loss just to get pulled apart by all the other women? I mean, Vera is trying to get Ferguson to drop her mask at this point, but Ferguson keeps up the act. I mean, an act if she is faking. Or maybe there is no act, maybe she has lost her memory, but Vera's convinced that it is all an act, and she goes up to Ferguson, she creeps right up into Ferguson's face, and she tells her that when the women come for her, she won't save her, she will not stand in their way, and she hopes that the women make it quick for her. It's a really great and chilling scene from Vera, and it's a total mirror image of who is now in control. It's hard to believe that this is the Vera who once upon a time was stumbling on her words, just like I did. But she used to stumble on her words in staff meetings back in seasons 1 and 2. So it's just an amazing journey that Vera has really come on a long way. So anyway, meanwhile, while Vera is having this discussion with Ferguson, Mr. Jackson has to give Ali the news that Ferguson's on her way back to general, which doesn't go down too well, and Ali's already at breaking point. In fact, I think she's already on that path now of no return. So when Will tells Ali about Ferguson, she ends up breaking down in tears. You can really see that Ali she has no more fight left in her to do this anymore. And Will also tells Ali that he's quit, and Ali basically just tells him that he's a coward and that he's lucky that he has choices to just walk away. So once again, Will is failing the one woman who really needs him. Remember what happened to Kaz last season, and that's all I'm saying at this stage. But I do think Ali is out of her depth now. I mean, it's been very plain sailing for her since the siege up until now. And I think now she is coming to the realization that Top Dog really isn't for her. She wants to do it for Kaz and B. However, I do think that she is scared of the person that she is becoming. It's an awful, awful situation that she is currently in. Okay, so now it's time for Ferguson to come back to H Block. So, while the women are all out in the yard, Dr. Miller escorts Ferguson back, and straight away we get those freak chants. It was literally like watching season 4 all over again. It was great. Now, there was a couple of interesting things during this scene. So, while Ferguson is being escorted through the yard, Lou Kelly runs over and she shakes Joan's hand. Now, the reason for this is because Anne and Lou have got an arrangement going on, a deal for Lou to look after all the vulnerable women in order to get Reb's treatment. But the interesting part is that when they shook hands in front of all the women, Joan then started wiping her hand on her jumper. So this is indicating her OCD, which she had when she was the original Ferguson. So could this be a sign of this old Ferguson re-emerging? And it wasn't only this. When Ferguson is looking around at all the women, she spots Ali. And the stare that Joan gives Ali just makes me think that she knows exactly who Ali is. I mean, why didn't she stop looking at Boomer or one of the other women? Why was it Ali she stopped to focus on? Once again, this is making me think that she's definitely playing a game with her amnesia act. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments box below. Let's see what you guys are thinking. So anyway, Lou takes Ferguson into her unit, but she does warn Ferguson not to play any of her tricks and to 100% stay away from Reb. Don't even look at Reb the wrong way. It was interesting to find out in this episode that Lou Kelly and Ferguson actually don't have any history together, because way back in season 2 when Ferguson first arrived as the new governor, Lou Kelly was transferred to a different prison. So if their paths did cross at any point in season 2, it would have been very, very brief. And if you remember, when Ferguson arrived in season 2, she wanted to stamp out the drug problem. So the fact that she has Lou Kelly transferred to another prison actually makes sense. Also, I think that Lou will have some big plans for Ferguson. I mean, Lou may not have any history with Ferguson, but I bet she's heard all the stories. So Lou will definitely be using Ferguson at some point for her own gain, which is going to be very, very dangerous. Right then, so later on in the episode, Ferguson is in her cell, listening to all the Ferguson chants and all the abuse that's being shouted at. And in walks Mari Winter to check to see if she's okay. Now, I absolutely love this scene because, in fact, I just love that all these characters who arrived in season 6 and season 7 who never met Ferguson are now finally meeting her. It's just quite nostalgic, if you ask me. I just like it. Anyway, so Mari tells Ferguson not to worry about the chants. The women will move on to someone else next week. Ferguson asks Mari if they have any history together, which Mari replies, nope, we don't have any history. I am wondering what Mari is up to. I do think she has a plan, but a little bit more about that a little bit later. So anyway, sticking with Ferguson, Ferguson goes and she has a session with Dr. Miller, and she tells him that she wants to remember everything that Joan Ferguson has done, and not just what she's done, but why she did it. And a really another interesting moment in the scene was Ferguson checking out Dr. Miller's goldfish in his office. So if Ferguson has indeed lost her memory, then I think these little Easter egg hints are going to trigger something for her very soon. So talking about Ferguson's memory loss. Now, I know in these videos that I am heavily referring that Ferguson is faking, but let's just think about it for a moment. What if she's not faking? Maybe all these little things that she keeps recognising might just be little flashes that might be going on inside her head, but she doesn't know what they mean. It's a little bit like a jigsaw, but she just needs help putting the pieces back together. Now, this doesn't mean that she still isn't dangerous. She's still a bloody psychopath, most definitely. But with Vera telling Joan to drop the act in this episode, I think Vera needs to be careful what she wishes for, because if she really cannot remember anything that's happened to her, then doesn't that work in Vera's favour? Not just Vera, but Vera, Will and Jake. I mean, I think Jake already believes that Ferguson has lost her memory. Mr. Jackson, I'm not too sure if he believes it or not. He hasn't really spoken about it very much. But Vera point blank refuses to believe it. But like I said, Vera needs to be very careful and just take a look at the bigger picture here, because if this really isn't an act, and she does indeed have amnesia, but later on ends up getting her memory back to everything that's happened to her, then Vera, Will and Jake are in some serious shit. Remember back in episode 4 of this season, Vera mentions to Will and Jake, what if Ferguson has that photo that Murphy took of them at the graveside, beg your pardon. Now, I don't think the writers would have brought this up if it didn't mean something that's going to happen later on down the line. I do believe that Ferguson has all the ammunition to destroy these three characters. So if Ferguson isn't faking, but gets her memory back later on, then all hell is going to break loose. I'm still convinced that Ferguson will single out Vera, and Vera will get all the blame, and this will end up with Vera ending up on the wrong side of the bars. Imagine now if this season 8, Ferguson gets her memory back towards the end of this season, and Vera ends up a prisoner in her own prison. It would be one hell of a twist and a great story setup for the final season next year. But even if this doesn't happen, you mark my words, guys, Ferguson's memory will return and play a big part in the season final. You watch this space. Anyway, still on Ferguson now, another great powerful scene that happens in this episode is between Ali and Joan in the showers. So Ali arrives in the showers and she sees Mari and a few of the women in there, and then she clocks Joan, who is at the mirror brushing her hair, and Ali tells the women to get out, and Joan turns around and looks at Ali. So Ali then pretty much is asking Ferguson, what game are you playing at? And Ferguson responds by telling her that she ain't playing any game, she's lost her memory. So Ali decides to give Ferguson a history lesson, which was brilliant to see, by the way. It reminded me of that moment back in season 5 when Frankie was relaying all of Ferguson's crimes at the kangaroo court. That's what it just reminded me of. It was amazing. So Ali grabs Ferguson's face and she's basically screaming at her, telling her that she stabbed B to death, she gutted her, and then she reminds her that she snapped Iman's neck and she cut out Juicy Lucy's tongue. But this history lesson proves way too much for Ferguson. She ends up having a complete breakdown and is screaming over and over again in the mirror. And Ali seems genuinely shocked, and she ends up letting Joan go while she's in this hysterics. And Joan runs out of the shower block screaming. And I tell you what, guys, this scene gave me shivers. The acting between these two was outstanding, I've got to say. My only whinge about this scene is that it didn't go on for longer. I mean, it was a moment we were all waiting for. Ali and Joan coming face to face, alone, together for the first time. And just as it started out, it just finished. And I do believe it's because we haven't got our usual 12-episode seasons this year. Because I think if we did our 12-episode seasons, this scene would have been long. The scene would have been longer with these two. I mean, it was awesome when Ali was reminding Ferguson of everything that she did, and the fact that we got a B mention again. But it was just a shame that it wasn't a much longer scene and a much longer history lesson. But that's just me. I love it when old characters get mentioned. Anyway, I am now going to move on to Boomer. Yes, so Boomer had her own little storyline going on in this episode. And, I tell you what, guys, I absolutely love Boomer. She really has come a long way, and in this particular episode as well, she was definitely the voice of reason and the shoulder for everyone to cry on, including Ali, and I'm absolutely loving it. Good old Boomer. Anyway, so during a scene in the call centre, Boomer is making one of her usual phone calls for market research, and she ends up talking to this guy called Gavin. So basically this Gavin guy, he ends up doing some small talk with Boomer and asks her how she is, much to Boomer's surprise. So Boomer is telling him that she's doing some market research on chocolate, and he tells her that he is obviously lactose intolerant and he can't have chocolate, and Boomer hilariously says that she could never live without chocolate. Gavin then says that he has to try and find his pleasures elsewhere, which starts to make me think that this guy wants to get to personally know Boomer, probably in a more of a sexual way. But anyway, later on, Boomer tells Ruby in a really, really cute scene that she spoke to this guy today called Gavin, and she has his number saved and she's going to give him a call back tomorrow. Which she ends up doing, and Ruby is listening in. So Boomer and Gavin are having this little chat, and he tells Boomer he wants to know who's on the end of that sexy voice. And it's a little bit of a sad scene then, because Boomer ends up describing what Ali looks like to him, along with the fact that she's 25 years old and she's a swimwear model. And he ends up replying by telling her that she sounds like the perfect woman. Anyway, guys, I'm a little bit nervous about this. I'm kind of happy that Boomer is having little cute chats with some random guy on the phone, but at the same time, I'm wondering, who is this guy? We don't know who he is. Is there more to this that meets the eye? I've been reading some people's comments over on Twitter recently, and they are all saying that the guy sounds like that NSO guy who is the one that's trying to frame Judy. And do you know what? It could be. But I don't know what game he'd be playing, having chats with Boomer, unless he's going to go and try and get into Boomer's head and try and get her to spy on Judy. A little bit like that time when Liz was being brainwashed by Detective Kaplan back in season 4 and 5. But to be honest, I think that would just be stupid, because Judy is told at the start of this episode that she's been extradited to the US. So, which we'll talk about that in just a moment, but I personally don't think that it is the NSO guy. I actually have my own little crazy theory as usual, but I think this guy that Boomer's talking to is actually going to turn out to be a nutter, a total nutcase. And I also think that now that Boomer has described to this guy that she looks like blonde hair, basically is Ali, looks like Ali, could actually possibly place Ali in danger. Now, you probably think I'm off my rocker here, but hear me out, guys. We don't know what's going to happen in these last 3 episodes. A lot can happen. Now, in Prisoner Cell Block H, the original, there was a storyline that played out, which involved whenever a prisoner escaped from the prison, they were being tracked down by a madman, and they were being sent back to the prison in a body bag. Now, what if this is a storyline that could play out towards the end of this season and on to next? And poor Ali, if she does escape at some point, this guy's going to know what she looks like, and she's going to get caught by this madman. I know, this is a bit of a crazy theory, but this was actually one of those brilliant storylines that Prisoner Cell Block H actually did. So maybe the Wentworth writers could be lining this up as a storyline for its final chapter. We will have to wait and see. Anyway, there wasn't too much of Mari in this episode, apart from what I've already mentioned. But I am starting to think that she is up to something. I don't think that she is out to hurt anyone anymore, not even Ruby. I do feel she has redeemed herself and seen the light over the Ruby thing. But I do think she has a plan to escape from the prison. But this time, she's going to do it without hurting anyone. Now, why do I think this? I can hear you all asking this now. Well, Mari is currently in Lou's crew being looked after by Lou. And recently, Mari has been helping Lou and Reb with making money by setting up the drug supply for LSD. Now, this is going to help Lou and Reb make more big money for Reb's operation, but there was a scene in this episode where Lou tells Mari that she can have 30% of the profit, but Mari tells Lou that she'll happily just take 20 for herself and 20% for Reb. And Reb ends up saying thank you to Mari. So this is Mari trying to continue to get Reb's trust, I suppose. So, but also, we see Lou with the phone telling Reb that they've only got 10 grand left to get. So, when she says this, we automatically see Mari showing an interest on the sly, quite discreetly. It was just a little discreet touch to it. It might mean nothing, but I don't think it did. And this makes me think that maybe Mari is going to try and eventually get hold of Lou's phone to gain access to this money, get it transferred to another account, and she is then going to set up her own escape to leave Wentworth. And I think that is Mari's game. Because if you think about it, she's facing life behind bars for everything that she has done. She's tried to make things up with Ali, but that ship has well and truly sailed, especially after last week. And Mari knows Ali's gone. She's gone now. She's too far gone. So Mari is only currently in one piece because of Lou protecting her. So now the only thing left for Mari to do is to get out of that prison once and for all and start a new life. But this time she won't want anyone hurt. I mean, of course, Lou and Reb won't be happy if Mari does steal the money. But I suppose it's not as bad as getting the prison held up in a siege like last time. So that's my thoughts on Mari at the moment. I do feel that she is foiling a little private escape attempt. I mean, she has redeemed herself and seen the light, and I don't think she wants to see anybody physically hurt, but she is playing that game to get out of that prison once and for all. Let me know in the comments box below, do you agree with this? Let me know, guys, what you think of this one. Okay, so a quick mention now of Linda Miles. Okay, so we all know as viewers that she has completely changed as a character since the siege. It hasn't been mentioned on the show yet that she is suffering from PTSD, but it has been mentioned in magazine articles, and it does make me a little bit mad because Linda needs some help. I don't know why she hasn't been forced to go and see Dr. Miller yet. Surely the staff can see that something is wrong. Now, I know that Mr. Jackson did ask Linda what was going on after she pepper sprayed Judy a few episodes back, but we are now 7 episodes in and nobody has bothered to sit down and have a chat with her. Anyway, I'm going to stick with Linda, but I'm also going to be bringing in Judy and Reynolds in this, alright? So stay with me. So at the start of this episode, Reynolds tells Judy that she is being sent to the US and to basically make the most of the fresh air while she still can. So straight away, Judy demands to talk to her father and tries to stage a little sit-down protest. But Linda is having none of it, and she even gets her baton out ready to attack. But she does have second thoughts because she can see that there's too many people around, so instead they pick Judy up and take her back to the unit. So Judy asks Ali for help in trying to make a phone call to her dad, and it's really interesting because Boomer actually mentions at this point that Lou has a mobile phone. Which just makes me laugh, guys, because why can't Ali just take a crew of women down to Lou's unit and grab that phone? But then saying that, I suppose Lou will just end up lagging on Ali anyway to Anne Reynolds, so it's probably the safest bet just to leave Lou alone with that phone. But anyway, the only other way to make a phone call is of course in the call centre. So during a scene in the call centre, an officer is paid to look the other way when Judy comes in to make that phone call. So international numbers are blocked, but of course Judy manages to hack her way around that because she's a professional hacker. But just as the phone call is connecting, in walks Miss Miles. Boomer and the girls, they try to cause a distraction, but Linda clocks Judy straight away. And Linda then beats Boomer with a baton to get to Judy, which is just mental. I mean, even Ali is shocked at this point. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Linda Miles is definitely going to push the women too far, and they are going to fight back. You mark my words. Anyway, eventually, much later in the episode, Judy is finally granted permission to speak to her father, under a supervised watchful eye of Anne Reynolds. So Judy chats to her dad, and she tells him that she's been extradited and he needs to do something. But he tells her that there is nothing that he can do, and she's literally crying and begging for him to do something, and he ends up hanging up on her. And it's interesting because at this point we start to think that maybe Anne Reynolds does have a heart after all, because she gives Judy a box of tissues to wipe her eyes. But then Anne leans into Judy and tells her, "You must be such a disappointment. Proper nasty." However, I can understand Anne Reynolds' anger, as she has lost her daughter to a terrorist attack in the past, and she believes that Judy is a terrorist, so I can understand why she hates Judy. But this does end up pushing Judy right over the edge, because earlier on in the episode, Judy has learnt that Luke Kelly has been slipping notes to Miss Miles for private meetings. So Judy ends up slipping a note to Miss Miles in order to get Miss Miles alone, to force her to force Miss Miles to let her ring her father. But while Judy is in Anne's office during that scene, she sees the note under Anne's laptop. So Judy now knows that Anne is the one who's going to meet Luke Kelly. So Judy gets Boomer and Ruby to help her. But so basically, Ruby and Boomer, they think that Judy is going to try and hassle Miss Miles for that phone call. But Judy obviously has her own plan in mind. So, but Boomer and Ruby are totally unaware that it's going to be Anne Reynolds who's going to walk into that kitchen. So anyway, when Anne does arrive, Boomer puts a bag over her head, and Anne ends up falling over and hitting her head. Boomer and Ruby, they both realise that they have just hurt the general manager. But then Judy takes things even further by knocking Anne over the head with some stick or some mop stick or whatever it is, and then she starts kicking the absolute crap out of her while she's already out for the count. So Boomer and Ruby stop Judy and they grab her back and take her to the unit, but Boomer and Ruby are really, really pissed off. They are in real deep shit. They have just attacked the general manager of that whole prison. Nobody knows it was them apart from themselves. And Boomer does go to tell Ali and asks for Ali's help, but when Boomer sees how messed up Ali is at the moment, she decides to keep quiet. But Ruby gets really worried, thinking that if Anne doesn't get found until morning, she could be dead by then. So Ruby slips a note into the officer's office, and then the alarm shoots off, which we haven't heard for a while, guys, have we? So the officers come running from all directions, all over, and Anne is found unconscious. Vera and Jake arrive on the scene, and they are wondering who the hell could have done this, and the alarm sounds through the whole prison, while Boomer and Ruby are in their cells pretty much shitting it, but Judy is just out there sitting in the unit by herself, enjoying the chaos. She doesn't seem phased at all. She's sitting there with her arms crossed, cool as a cucumber, and then she takes a final last look at the camera before the episode ends. My god, guys, Judy is going to be a bad guy. I've told you. This is it now. She has started a war between the officers and the prisoners, because you know what happens when an officer gets hurt by a prisoner. The other officers make things a lot harder for the women. But the fact that the biggest boss of that prison right now, the general manager, has been beaten to the point of hospitalization means all hell is going down in that prison between the staff and the inmates. War is just breaking out. And Judy knows the women are already at breaking point, and she is just up to that ante. Absolutely brilliant. Bring on the chaos, I say. So, and of course, things do kick off next week as a massive riot does break out in the prison, led mainly by Luke Kelly. So next week's episode is going to be completely off the scale. So another great week for Wentworth. Things are getting better and better as the episodes are going on. I am loving all the storylines and the mystery that is surrounding these storylines at the moment. Believe it or not, I think my favourite moment from this episode was the scene with Ruby and Boomer having a little heart-to-heart and sharing a bed. I am absolutely loving their friendship right now, and I'm really liking Ruby this season. She's really grown on me. I never really disliked her as a character, but I suppose there was a part of me that didn't really care if she lived or died, if you know what I mean. But I am now really loving Ruby, and I think she's been great this season. She brings in a lot of comedy with Boomer as well, and I'm just loving it. So there was no Rita in this episode, which didn't surprise me at all after she went on the run during last week's episode. I had a big feeling that we wouldn't see her this week, just to let some of the other storylines make room for them to start exploding. But I do hope we get her back very soon. Fingers crossed she's back by the final, guys, and she gets to meet Miss Ferguson. So guys, let me know in the comments box below, what was your favourite moment from this week's episode? And let me know, do you think there could be a death next week during the riot? And if so, who? Let me know your thoughts, guys. And as we're on the subject of comments, it's now time for some comment replies. So we have Harry Freeman 07. Great trailer, looking forward to the riot. Think this is what said in... Oh, there we are. Think this is what said because it was hard to hear, so I have to apologise. The trailer wasn't the best quality, but it's the best that we had. So you've gone on to say that Will is saying no phones, no visitors, no rec room, no exercise. And there's also an officer over the radio saying the prisoners have breached the creche corridor. If you guys haven't seen the trailer yet, it's on the YouTube channel, so take a look, guys, at this 30-second trailer. It does show some of those prisoners trying to get a Grace in the creche. It's going to be quite edge of your seat next week. So anyway, Harry, thank you for your comment. And we've got Johnny Barr. Hey, Johnny. My goodness, looks like it's all going to kick off in a huge way. The whole season has been building to this moment. Can't wait for it. Yes, Johnny. Definitely. We're in for some big episodes now, and it's about time. I mean, I've loved the whole season, but we need something huge going off now, don't we? And it's only episode 8 next week, so we've got a riot next week. I wonder what the hell they have planned for episode 9 and 10. It's going to be good, isn't it? Anyway, Johnny, thank you for your comment. And we have James Windle. Hey, James. I can't deal with it. So good. Kinda still hoping Judy doesn't turn out to be a terrorist, but that look at the end, it's all coming to a boil now. So excited. Yes, James. Judy is the one who's orchestrating all of this. I mean, there's loads of different things going on, including Anne just literally letting all prisoners mix together, but it's Judy who is lighting the fuse here, isn't it? So it is going to be absolutely brilliant. So thank you for your comment, James. And we have King Les. It looks like Sheila's not coming until episode 9 or episode 10. Episode 9 is called Monster. Don't know who it's about. Could be about Joan or Sheila or Lou. Sheila missed out on 8 episodes, so why would she be on cover of season 8? So, she is arriving in episode 9. It's been confirmed Sheila is arriving in episode 9. I know a lot of fans are disappointed that it's quite late in the season, but we don't actually know much about her. We know the basics, but we don't know what is going to play when she arrives in prison. So it all might make sense towards the end of this season, and of course she's going to be in it for next year. So don't worry, guys, she's on her way, and probably the reason why she's on the cover of season 8 is because she plays a big part in these final 2 episodes. So thank you for your comment, King Les. And we have Melissa Scott. I really enjoyed this episode. I said I was going to stop watching if B died, but still watching. Oh, Melissa, well, glad that Wentworth still has you. B was my favourite character as well, and I was really worried about how the show was going to go. I didn't think it was going to last more than 1 or 2 seasons after she died, if I'm honest. But it's just amazing how they've continued the show on, and it's still absolutely mind-blowing now as it's going on. But I miss Beam. Maybe she'll come back as a ghost. I'm still convinced she will make an appearance as a ghost. But thank you for your comment, Melissa, and thank you all for your amazing comments. I'm loving some of your theories right now. Some of you definitely should be writers for Wentworth. So keep those comments coming, guys. I'm really, really enjoying reading them. Okay, so if you've made it until the end of this video, thank you all for sticking around. I will see you all again very soon with some spoilers for next week's Riot, and you will not want to miss it, trust me. So make sure you've hit that subscribe button, okay? So take care, everyone. I will see you all very soon.